Developing our solutions is probably one of the most exciting aspects of our theory of change, and it's really important that we do this well. If you come from a particular background where you work with a particular modality or you are a practitioner of sorts, it's really easy for us to kind of come at our solutions with a very narrow view. So it's important that we make sure that we're not only designing solutions that we are best equipped to kind of execute or contribute to an impact intervention, but we want to make sure that we are designing solutions that ideally are bridging the gap between the problems that we've identified in the present and that big picture vision that we have for the future. One exercise that is really useful is this exercise, which is based on the Start with Why framework by Simon Sinek. And we begin by identifying the why of our solution. And typically in an impact intervention, the why is always going to be, we are wanting to address this particular problem so that we can bring forth this particular aspect of our vision for the future. We really want our solution to be the thing that bridges the gap. If our solution is only addressing problems and it's not bringing forth that big picture vision that we have for the future, then we're really only problem solving. We're not really creating change. If we're only focused on that big picture vision and we're not addressing any problems, then the way in which we are bringing about that vision that we have for the future might not be the most impactful. It might not be the most ethical or the most equitable approach. We want to make sure that we are both addressing problems and bringing forth that vision. And ideally, we want to design solutions that enable us to do both of those. The Start with Why framework then moves from that why to the how. So the how is kind of the approaches, the strategies, or the methods that we're using. If we are working on an advocacy or an activism campaign strategy is really going to be the kind of main how. It might be the way in which we develop programs as a development practitioner or a social worker. And we want to get super clear on what evidence we have to kind of back up the approach that we are taking. We want to make sure that we're grounding the interventions that we carry out and our solutions in evidence-based case studies. We've got the data, we've consulted with our beneficiaries and people with lived experience as much as possible. So the how is really important. This is kind of that underlying strategic approach or methods that we're taking in our work. And then the what is the actual solution or the intervention. How are we going to carry that out? If that is a campaign, what are the tactics that we're using? What are the kind of key campaign moments? What is our campaign timeline? Who are our target decision makers? Who are we going to rely on to kind of organize at the community level? How are we going to mobilize people? What are the specific actions or activities that we are going to undertake as part of those core tactics that we've identified? If this is a community development intervention, the what is going to be the actual project or the program that we are going to implement. Maybe the what is a pilot project that we are going to carry out with a small group of, say, a dozen beneficiaries, and then we're going to collect data, we're going to analyze and evaluate that program, and then we're going to look at scaling it. That's the what. But before we focus on the what, it can be really easy to want to jump to that because that is the fun part. That's the work that we're doing. Before we get clear on the what, we want to make sure that we've got that why locked in, and we want to make sure that we're designing a project or an intervention that is bridging the gap between those two. And we want to make sure that we've got a bit of a strategic approach. There's evidence and a kind of tested methodology underpinning what we're doing. Another great activity is the Identifying Desired Changes exercise. We often think about change in terms of static differences at 2 points in time, like a before and an after. But all change processes are made up of continuities, discontinuities, and emergences. Every change process, whether it is dyeing your hair, growing a garden, or working to change a legislation or policy, there is always going to be continuities, discontinuities, and emergences. Continuities are those aspects of reality that are going to continue throughout the change process. To use the example of dyeing my hair itself is going to be the continuity. It's the thing that continues to exist throughout that entire change process. Then we have discontinuities. Discontinuities are the aspects or features of reality that existed at the beginning of the intervention that we no longer want to exist at the end of the intervention. So in the hair dyeing example, it would be the brunette color of my hair. That would be a discontinuity. At the beginning of the change process or the intervention, I had brunette or brown hair. At the end of the change process, that aspect of reality no longer exists. My hair is no longer brown. Then we have emergences. These are the new changes or things that we want to be brought about. And this is sometimes where I think we spend most of our time without considering those other aspects. In terms of emergences, what are the things that currently exist in reality, or the things that we want to exist at the end of a change process that didn't exist before the intervention? In the hair dyeing example, that would be blonde hair if I was to dye my hair blonde. That is something new that has emerged. So we want to get super clear on the emergences, the discontinuities, and the continuities that we expect to see in our intervention. And ideally, we want to be designing solutions that can bring about multiple discontinuities, continuities, and emergences. If not, we want to at least be able to design solutions that can clearly bridge two of these. So we want solutions that enable both emergences and discontinuities, or we want a solution that can preserve continuities and bring about discontinuities, or we want solutions that can bring about emergences and preserve continuities. Ideally, we want something that can do all of those. If not, we want to at least design something that's going to bridge two of those things. In terms of designing our solutions and kind of choosing what solutions we have, something we can think about is reverse engineering from the outcome or the impact that we are expecting to have with our particular solution, and identifying what possibilities currently exist in terms of solutions that are able to achieve those outcomes or goals. Thinking about which ones exist. There are some that we might be leading the way. They're quite innovative. They haven't been tested as well. They're not as certain in terms of guaranteeing results, and we might have to be a little bit experimental or innovative. Then there are ones that we might need to shape. So they've currently been tested or tried in some contexts. Maybe we need to take that solution and shape it a little bit to suit our particular context that we're working in. Or there might be existing solutions that have seen a lot of success. And what we want to do is we want to leverage that success to either scale it, make it more sustainable, or help it reach a new group of people. So thinking about where the potential solutions exist and which ones we are going to choose. Depending on the type of organization or project that you're running, maybe if you are a social entrepreneur, you have the capacity to be a little bit more experimental and innovative and take those risks. You might be looking at leading and shaping with your solution. If maybe you are part of a large not-for-profit and you've got some funders or donors who want to make sure that there's a lot of evidence and you've tested a lot of the assumptions and you've got a lot of kind of proof that it's not a very risky intervention, you'd probably be looking more at the leveraging aspect of it. We have ways to forecast future innovations, so we can design our interventions in a way that is going to make sure that if things change, we're not left in the dark. AI was something that I think really kind of shook up a lot of organizations and the way that they work. And so thinking about how we might begin to anticipate potential changes in the aspects like society or technology that surround our intervention can help us to think about how we might be a little bit more innovative or adaptive in our approach to change. Then we can think about how our solutions themselves are going to change. Depending on where we are in this kind of solution cycle. Most solutions will always go through these 4 key stages. So we begin with exploration, where we're really just kind of testing the waters. We're making a lot of assumptions about the solution or the problem itself and how the solution might address that problem. And we want to make sure that we're actually testing those kind of assumptions really early on. Then we get to the experimentation phase. This is where we're kind of testing and seeing what our solution looks like in our particular community. We're collecting more data, we're running those pilot projects, whatever they might be. Then we're going to look at scaling. This is how we actually begin to refine, systematize, or expand our solution so that we can have a greater reach and impact. And then we would finally be looking at optimizing our solutions. So once we have these fully established, fully tested and refined solutions, how can we make sure that we're running them as efficiently as possible, that we are building for resilience and ongoing improvements. Beginning to identify which of these stages your solution fits in is going to help you with the assumption testing and evidence collecting aspects of your theory of change. It might also be important that we have to rewire for change. So if you are kind of focused on your particular solution or intervention, we often overlook the fact that there are all of those external factors in the communities that we're working with that will also need to change to support our solution. So thinking about the old way of doing things and how the status quo has kind of enabled what we would consider to be business as usual to thrive, what are some of the changes that would need to happen to support our solutions, and how can we integrate those into our theory of change? It's inevitable that people are going to resist some of the aspects of our interventions. And so just being able to identify any potential resistance that we might have to deal with in our intervention. This could be potential pushback from specific stakeholders or members of the community. It could also be the way in which external economic, political, technological, or cultural forces actually resist our intervention from being successful. And there could also be possible weak points in our organization or the way in which we are actually carrying out our solution. So being able to identify all of these potential points for resistance is going to help us to design strategies. We might not actually have to deal with these things. We might be able to just carry out our project without dealing with any of these things, but it's still really important that you actually take time to identify those particular potential resistance points and just plan for how you're going to deal with them so that you're not taken by surprise if they do arise. Finally, one of my favorite activities in terms of ensuring the sustainability and the impact of our solutions is solution bundling. So how can we identify the key elements or aspects of our solution and actually use that to either gather things together in like a bundle? How could we connect different aspects of our solution? How could we attach these different elements closely or blend them together? These are all different ways that we can kind of bundle aspects of our solution to ensure that those aspects of the solution that are maybe going to face more resistance can be partnered with those aspects that we think are going to be a lot easier to uptake and have that sustainable impact that we want to have. These are all exercises and tactics that we have in our Impact Roadmap Toolkit. It is the complete guide for individual grassroots change makers or people leading organizations to develop a nice, dynamic, robust theory of change and an adaptable strategy for impact. If your theory of change is like the map of the kind of context of change that you are navigating, then our solutions are this aspect of the theory of change canvas. This is important because we want to make sure we're constantly changing and updating our understanding of the context that we're dealing with as we plan, test, refine, and execute our solutions so that we can have an adaptable strategy. If you would like to download the Theory of Change Canvas, you can get that one free at the School of Social Impact. If you would like to check out any of these tactics and exercises that we have in the Impact Roadmap Toolkit, I will also leave the link to that one in the description below.